name's Neil Cunningham. I am an emergency physician here at St Bede's and also the new Director of Medical Workforce. So I'm going to MC this evening. I'll be introducing lots of people to have a chat with you, and you'll have an opportunity to ask some questions as well. So before I start, I would just like to formally acknowledge. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the people of the Kulin Nations and any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people here today. We pay our respects to our Aboriginal elders, past, present and emerging. They hold the memories and traditions, culture and hopes of Aboriginal Australia. So, welcome. All right, you're all about to be interns, and that's a really, really exciting time. Some of you will get the opportunity to be interns here at St Vincent's Hospital as well. So, without further ado, I'm actually going to introduce our first speaker. Coming up is Wilma Beswick. So, Wilma has a number of roles in the hospital, all of them important. She is the head of general medical training. She's been a previous clinical dean of St Vincent's Clinical School, and she's the chief medical officer here as well. So there is no one better placed to tell you a little bit about St Vincent's Hospital in Melbourne. I'm going to hand over to Wilma.
Thanks very much, Neil, and I'd like to add my welcome to you all, and thank you for coming. I trust you've enjoyed having a look around our hospital and talking to our junior medical staff. But before I tell you a little bit about the hospital, as Neil said, education and training is really very dear to my heart. I was a clinical dean here for a considerable number of years. And I've also been the Director of Physician Training here for a similar large number of years, as well as the Chief Medical Officer and the Head of General Medicine. But I guess just reflecting today on, what are those three jobs that I've got now that give me the most pleasure and joy? And I think really working with the junior medical staff, helping them to achieve their career goals, seeing them mature as individuals and also mature clinically gives us a great sense of pride here at St Vincent's. And we have a very large group of people, senior clinicians and other junior doctors who are always ready and willing to assist our more junior colleagues in their career endeavours. And we do hope that you'll seriously consider joining our team. You won't be disappointed. We place a very strong emphasis on junior doctor training and education here, and it's one of our strategic goals across all of the hospital, and it's strongly supported by the executive and the senior leadership group. So just to tell you a little bit about our hospital, we're one of the 5 tertiary hospitals in Melbourne. We're probably the smallest of the tertiaries, but we are part of a much larger group, and I think perhaps this is not recognised by everyone. We're part of the St Vincent's Health Australia, which is the largest Catholic not-for-profit health provider in the country. The revenue across St Vincent's Health Australia is 2.2 billion per year. So we have that stewardship to make sure that we spend that money very wisely in promoting the healthcare of our patients and looking after them to the best of our ability. We're the 12th largest private company in Australia, and we now have more than 30 facilities, mainly across the eastern seaboard. St Vincent's Health Australia employs 17,000 staff, and we offer greater than 1 million occasions of service and clinical care per year. St Vincent's Hospital Melbourne is the largest of the St Vincent's Hospital entities, and we're part of the public division together with St Vincent's Hospital Sydney. And that interaction with Sydney and learning how they do things and what their research capability is and joining with them has been a very rich partnership over the years. So here in Melbourne, we've got three main campuses. The tertiary centre here at Fitzroy. We have got aged care and rehabilitation at St George's in Kew. And we've got Caritas Christi, which is our palliative care headquarters at Kew. Now, Caritas Christi is undergoing a major refurbishment, or redevelopment really, which should be finished within the next couple of years, and that's going to provide a state-of-the-art facility for palliative care, clinical care and research. And we have 16 sites as well across Melbourne, and that includes community facilities, which include rehabilitation, community mental health, aged care. We have a number of residential facilities. We run general practice services. We're also the state provider of correctional services, both at primary level, looking after the prison population at Port Phillip Prison, and also the tertiary provider for prisoners across the state. And we have a secure ward here where those patients are cared for. We also have a very strong reputation in renal medicine, and we run a number of dialysis services. We have 75 clinical departments, and we have a very strong reputation both here and overseas for clinical care and research, particularly in the area of microsurgery. We did the first and only hand transplant in Australia. Neurosciences, orthopaedics, gastroenterology, oncology, mental health and palliative care, just to mention a few. One of our major tenets of care is looking after the marginalised and disadvantaged. And we have a particular focus across our services and specific programs to meet the clinical needs and general health needs of Aboriginal people, the homeless, people experiencing drug addiction and mental health problems. And also, as I said, adults in the justice system. We also have a comprehensive cancer service here, which includes an on-site radiotherapy centre. And we're about to embark upon a detailed design of Australia's first biomedical engineering facility called the Aikenhead Centre of Medical Discovery. And if you come here next year, this building hopefully will not be here, but there will be a hole in the ground, which will be the start of that very exciting partnership. And that's a partnership with Melbourne University, Swinburne, RMIT, Wollongong University, and a number of the Ioneer and a number of other services to really put biomedical engineering on the map in Australia. So this is just a snapshot of our 2017 and 2018 statistics, I suppose. We have 781 beds across our 27 facilities. We have 48,000 emergency presentations, 7,000 elective surgery admissions. We have a Good Samaritan Fund where the staff of the hospital donate money each week to support the care needs, not the medical needs, but the care needs of disadvantaged patients. And so we've provided $180,000 to assist people who are suffering hardship. 60,000 inpatient attendances per year, lots of food, lots of volunteers, and a very busy outpatient service. We also have 770 research publications, and they're going up annually. So we're really developing a very strong research base here. And we recently celebrated our 125th, I was going to say wedding anniversary, but that's not right. Our 125th anniversary. I don't think anyone's ever had 125 years of marriage. All right, so that's a bit of a snapshot of St Vincent's, Melbourne. And as I said at the beginning, you know, we'd love to have you come and work with us. We promise to look after you very well, and also to help you travel through the early years of your career. And we do provide outstanding support, outstanding teaching and education. Our junior staff are very important to us. We regard them as the future of our hospital. And, you know, it's our mandate to look after them to the best of our ability. So welcome, and I hope you, you know, think about your decision. And as I said, we'd love to have you here next year. Thank you.
I've just lost my running sheet. Right. Now, before we get to the video, I did promise Rachel I would stay on script, but I do get distracted. And something Wilma just said then reminded me of my first week at St. Vincent's Hospital, which must have been back in 2004, I think. So the thing that triggered it was the idea that we'd done our first hand transplant here. So my first week in emergency at St. Vincent's, I'm a registrar, trained in the UK, I've been up for 5 years in a trauma centre in Newcastle, and come to this lovely hospital in the middle of Melbourne. There's great coffee shops around, Chinatown's down the road, it's great, settled down here. And I'm just in the resus bay looking after someone with chest pain when this young Vietnamese guy comes running through the trauma bay with his hand missing, Monty Python style, with bullets batting it like this. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So we popped him into resus, and I said, oh, how'd you do this? And he had another extremely dubious looking friend stood next to him. And he said, oh, he couldn't talk. His friend said, oh, he had his hand out the car window. Didn't seem quite believable. Turned out they'd been having a surf fight in Fitzroy Gardens, just over the road. And I said, well, where's the hand? And eventually got out of his friend that the hand was still in the garden. So what we do have here at St. Vincent's is an incredible plastic surgery and hand unit and amazing microsurgeons. So I thought, well, if we can get the hand, we can get it back on. So we split into two teams. We had one team kind of securing this guy, making sure he was okay, while I spent a little bit of time on the phone to the ambulance and the police, trying to comb through Fitzroy Gardens and find the hand and persuade the ambulance officers that yes, they really could transport it, even if it wasn't attached to a human. And by the time it arrived, we were ready to go up, and we brushed the grass off and got him up. 17 minutes from when the patient actually arrived, we were able to send patient and hand upstairs, and that guy apparently is wielding the sword again without any difficulty. So that's the sort of thing I imagined when I went into emergency medicine, and I got to experience some of those things. And it's a little bit of a dopamine hit, as you can imagine. You get that, really interesting thing come through the door, something you've never seen before. You have to problem solve. You have to do unusual things. You have to step outside of protocol a little bit, and it's really rewarding. And that was really awesome. And it's a story to tell years later. Not every shift is like that, fortunately. And what you are about to embark on is a career in medicine where you're going to have highs and lows, and you're going to have times where it feels amazing and it's something really interesting you haven't seen before. And there's going to be other times where it feels hard, and you might be on night shifts, and you might be exhausted, or you might be doing exams, or you might have other things going on in your life that are making things difficult for you. And what we are aware of is that it's hard to be a junior doctor, and you will have read in the papers. There is, electronic version of papers these days that you might have come across, Facebook, Google, all that stuff. There's lots about junior doctors having difficult times, having depression, anxiety, and we expect that some of you will experience some of that in your early years. And we want to make sure that we pick that up, we help you, we support you from the very basics of making sure that you're not working too much, that you're supervised on a day-to-day basis. We've got some wonderful people. I'll introduce you to Andrew soon and Wilma at the very top end of things. But on a day-to-day basis, your bosses are going to be your residents and your registrars. And we're very confident that they're here to look after you. They're here to train you. They're here to teach you. And what happens at St. Vincent's is that we are genuinely a teaching hospital. And what I mean by that is that it's not just a name. It's very much a culture here. So if you're on a ward round and you refer something to your medical registrar and you get something wrong, you won't get told off, you might do, but you'll also get a tutorial afterwards, because that's what we do here. So you'll find yourself being explained, someone will talk to you about exactly what it is about the CCG that you've missed or the blood test that you don't understand, and we very much have that as part of our culture. So you're about to embark on a career that hopefully will be happy. But happiness is not just about sword fights and dopamine. Sorry, Andrew, you missed the first part of that story. Happiness is about doing something purposeful. Happiness is about long-term satisfaction. And I very much hope that you end up in the careers that you choose that give you that on a day-to-day basis, which means on the bad days when it's tough, then you still have that going on forwards. Okay. So, what we're going to do now is play a short video to introduce you to our interns.
Mr. Pierce? Mr. Pierce?
I think he's just arrested. We're going to clear the code.
I'm not feeling very well. What happened? We've got a great state-of-the-art centre where we can put on high-fidelity simulations for the interns, so it's not just theoretical learning and we do professional development, to actually get a chance to practice some of these skills with, potential risks, but a safe environment with no harm to patients. Are you there, Justin? Okay, good. Well done, guys.
As a student, you get told that you're going to be kind of a paper pusher or doing just kind of an administrative role. But here at St. Vincent's, you feel like a real doctor. I get to examine patients, take histories, do procedures, and really get to use those skills that I acquired as a medical student. I'm not just, putting in blood slips and ordering tests. I'm actually getting to do the role that I wanted to do.
And now we're seeing hearing aid order, and we're going to engage you as you know. So we're going up from right first.
Right,
It's a bit easier.
It's not just supports in the day-to-day job as well, it supports for your kind of broader professional goals. So I'm going to Hawaii on Saturday. I'm going to be presenting some research I did as a medical student, and taking that kind of time off work is probably difficult, but so much effort went behind the scenes in terms of the people running the intern program and rostering in order for me to get that kind of experience. It really showed me that they're really supporting your goals, your broader goals in your career.
The interns at St Vincent's are a very high calibre lot. They get well taught through the clinical school, and it's been a highly sought after place to go for both medical and surgical training for quite some years now.
I've had a pretty amazing experience so far. I'm only about 3 months into my internship, but I just couldn't have asked for a better intern year. I feel like I've already sort of exceeded all the expectations I had of myself for my intern year, and I've definitely learnt a lot, and I have St Vincent's to thank for that.
What we try to do with the interns and junior doctors that we've got here is prepare them to get onto a training scheme, not just in general surgery, but in urology, plastic surgery, neurosurgery, cardiothoracic surgery, all those specialties are potentially on option at St Vincent's for them to do as a junior doctor, with research supervision with specialised clinicians at a tertiary hospital. So there's really ample opportunity for those preparing for a career in surgery at St Vincent's.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm absolutely loving it. It's been fantastic. It's been very hands-on for me. And and that I guess was surprising to me just how much we are able to do in the surgical rotations. I've been able to scrub into theatre numerous times, perform some simple procedures as well as assisting with the more major procedures that we have. So I've been very, very lucky with the rotations I've had.
The main thing that I really like is as a first year sort of intern, getting to see patients on my own, getting to think about all the things that I've learned through medical school and apply them in practice, and sort of get guidance from senior doctors to help me do that best.
This year we had 66 interns, increasing each year. Most of them would tend to stay on and take second and third year jobs and get into training programs. I think it's the sort of place that once they get the foot in the door, they like it, they stay and they go forward.
I thought, well, when as a student you always think you're a bit nervous transitioning to the doctor role and you're not quite sure what to expect. So I didn't realise how helpful and supportive it would be, and it's been so smooth to make that move.
Well, I would say first of all, definitely apply to St. Bede's. This is a place where you'll get kind of quality education. You're surrounded by people who are experts in their field. I think it will be a really good decision in your professional journey to apply here.
I think St. Vincent's really is one of the best hospitals I could have hoped to be at my internship. I think it can be a really daunting process to apply for different intern positions, but I would highly recommend medical students coming here after their internship. It's been absolutely fantastic.
I think this is a good way to find out what I want to do. I'm actually not quite sure at all what I want to do at this moment. So it's good to get a broad overview of different things and to get, see other doctors doing what I could potentially be doing in the future to help me make that decision. I actually don't know at all.
I would encourage all the interns who want a good place to work to come along and try some business.
So I hope you enjoyed that. My favourite bit of that video, other than the bit that you guys laughed at, was Michael Johnston. So he's one of our colorectal surgeons, and you can see him there. He's saying, come St. Vincent, we do great general surgical training, a good place of surgical training. And the reason why he struggles with that is that he can't imagine doing anything other than surgery. And he loves it. I was sat up with him just before I came down here. He absolutely loves surgery. He loves teaching people how to do surgery. And this hospital is full of people like that. People who love what they're doing. We've got Andrew McIsaac, who's one of our director of cardiology here. I've seen him in the cath lab. I've taken patients up from emergency, and he's absolutely in his element. And we've got people all over the hospital who just love what they're doing. Many of you will not be doing interventional cardiology as an intern, and that's okay. And some of you won't even know what you want to do yet, and that's okay. As an intern, what you'll do here is you'll be rotating through a number of different specialties. You'll be inspired by people like Michael, people like Andrew, and that not necessarily means that you want to be a cardiologist or a colorectal surgeon. But it does mean that you'll get the chance to work with these people and see how this stuff's done really, really well by people who love what they're doing. And that will hopefully give you a little bit of modelling to say, okay, well, what do I want to do? Do I want to do specialty training? Am I looking at GP practice? Am I looking at something different? We hope to give you a really good, broad-based intern year anyway. So Stuart Dilly was the emergency physician on the last, and said if you want a good place to come and be an intern, here is one of them. I'm next going to introduce you to another emergency physician, Brendan Morrissey. So Brendan is part of our pre-vocational training group. He's a pre-vocational training supervisor, as well as Jenny Noonan, who's down here as well, who's an oncologist. I'm going to hand over to Brendan at this point, and he's going to organise a bit of a Q&A, so you don't need to hear from any more senior doctors, you can hear from our junior doctors. Brendan.
Hi everyone, I'm Brendan, I'm one of the emergency physicians, and as Neil says, along with Jenny and Jade, who's here somewhere, and Rachel, make up the medical educational team. I've been an emergency physician here since 2016, I've been working in St. Vincent since 2014, but prior to all that I am from Ireland. So if I'm speaking too quickly or mumbling or just not making any sense at all, please stop me and just ask me to repeat myself. No, not you. And down. I did have a good 47 slides to tell you all about what internship is like in St. Vincent's. I've been told I'm not allowed to do that. I'm going to try something a little bit different instead. Get people who are actually doing the job to talk to you about it. First of all, I'd like to introduce you to Rachel, our Medical Education Officer. Rachel might get you to introduce yourself, perhaps.
Hi guys, I'm Rach. I'm the MEO or Medical Education Officer here at St. Vincent's. I've been working here as a nurse in the emergency department for almost 8 years, and then about a year ago have transitioned into this new role, and I get to look after all the interns and all the other junior medical staff in the hospital. So my main role is to organise education, organise orientation, and then just generally look after our intern group throughout the year. But I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through.
So I might invite up onto our stage our willing participants in the Q&A session for today. So I might get them to introduce themselves.
We have a few of our intern group, Ryan, Nicole and Sophie, want to take seats up here. And Dom and Jackie, two of our HMOs. We're going to be asking them a little bit about what the job is like, what they find challenging, what they enjoy, and what orientation at St. Bees is like. But first of all, I might get you to chat a little bit about yourselves.
G'day, my name's Ryan. I trained at Uni Melbourne. I was based at St. Bees for my clinical years, and I'm obviously still here now. So, did you want anything broader than that, or? I'm juggling an internship with a 10-month-old. How about that at the moment as well?
Hi, my name's Nicole. I actually didn't study in Melbourne. I'm from Melbourne originally, but I studied at Notre Dame in Fremantle. So I moved back home this year, which has been lovely, but also a bit daunting not knowing anyone at the hospital and not having done my clinical years here, as quite a lot of the interns have. But it's been really good so far. I'm very supportive. And yeah, we'll get more later. So I'm Sophie. I do recognise a few familiar faces. I'm from Notre Dame, but I'm actually from Notre Dame in Sydney. So I did my first 2 years, and then you might be aware that as part of the Notre Dame curriculum, you can return to Melbourne for your last 2 years of your clinical schooling. So that was my story. Pass you on to Jack.
So I'm Jackie. I also went to the University of Notre Dame in Sydney, similar path to Sophie, 1 year apart. So I actually remember sitting here as a fourth year medical student myself, thinking about where I wanted to be as an intern, and a couple of years later, here we are. So I had a wonderful year last year in my internship, similar to Sophie. She's now.
I'm Domgoy. I'm a surgical resident here, HMO2. So I was an intern here last year, and prior to that trained at Melbourne, but wasn't a clinical school student here at St. Bees. But I made the decision to jump across and loved it.
Thanks, guys. I should have stressed at the start that if you have any questions at all, feel free to jump in and put your hands up. We'll try to answer them as they come up. So far, if anyone has any questions about Ryan's 10-month-old or what Sydney is like, please feel free. Otherwise, I was hoping to start with orientation into the hospital as an intern. Rachel, could you tell us a little bit about what the orientation package here is like?
Absolutely. So during orientation, we run a 3-day sort of program, which incorporates both lectures, but also some skills-based sessions to get you sort of as ready as possible for your first day as an intern. The 3-day session is then finished with a shadow shift, which you get to follow around the intern that is about to finish their job in the job that you are just about to start, so you can get as much information and ask as many questions as possible from the intern that's just about to finish, which I've heard is a pretty valuable day. After the shadow shift, it's a bit of a graduation ceremony with a pizza night that's put on by the resis that you would have been through, some of you would have been through on the tours tonight. So that sort of rounds out the week before starting on the Monday. I was going to ask a couple of you guys what you thought about the orientation week.
Yeah, orientation was good. So I had the advantage of being based at St Bees anyway for 3 years, so a lot of it was sort of familiarisation. But it's a great opportunity for, there was around about, of the 60 of us this year, about 30 were from St Bees, the clinical school, and the other 30 from all over the place. So it was really good sort of 3 days to be around all of the other interns in a pretty relaxed environment, plenty of chances to mix and mingle and get to know the rest of the people, so that when you're walking around the wards over the next few weeks and months, it was easy to spot the other interns, and it's always great to just to stop and catch up. And so the orientation for me was that was a really, really important part of it, was just to get our heads around who each other was, and I think it was really valuable.
Ryan, just how was your shadow shift? Was that preparing you well for your first?
Yeah, so I started on medical nights, which is a 7-day on, 7-day off roster. But to give the outgoing interns a good Friday night, I actually did the last 3 days of their rotation. So I came in for my shadow shift on Monday night, and I heavily trailed around behind the medical intern. And we got 4 pages all night. It was so quiet. Hospital was in just pristine condition. I sat in resis for many hours and had a chat about things and how life works. I didn't get a great hands-on feel about when things hit the fan in overnight and stuff. And then I had 2 days of the orientation, and my shadow shift is obviously already done, and then rolled into the nights on the Friday night at 9:30. So there was nothing else that could be done about it. It was great to have a quiet night in the hospital, but I probably could have done a few extra pages to learn the ropes. But it wasn't too bad, given I was a little bit more familiar with the place. But yeah, it was very interesting.
I thought the orientation was really good, the couple of days, just because you've been on holidays for 2 months or something, good to relearn cannulation, catheters, all the basic skills that you need on the ward. And then we had a lot of introductions from everybody, which was nice, and also lots of opportunities to meet the interns, and obviously I didn't know anybody, so it was everyone was very welcoming. In terms of shadow shift, my first rotation was in Warrnambool, so I actually didn't get to shadow anybody, but I had a phone handover of what Warrnambool was like. But even Warrnambool was, everyone there was very supportive and showed me the ropes, but I don't really think much can prepare you for your first proper week of interning. I think it's pretty scary, and but you get through it, and the rest of it's much better than the first week.
So very similar to what Ryan and Nicole have said, I found the orientation to be exceptional, very well organised. Covers things like your clinical skills that you're expected to know, even things like how to make referrals. And they also cover, what was also covered was what support is available to you, especially if things aren't going well, which I just felt very well supported from day dot. And then I was very lucky when it came to my shadow shift. I started off on cardiothoracic surgery on the cardiac side, so that was pretty daunting, going from being a medical student straight into a baptism of fire. However, I loved it. I started with a resident on my shadow shift, but then one of my registrars said to me, I'm coming in my day off just to teach you a few more things, because he turned around and he said to me, I remember what it was like starting as an intern. And I was exceptionally grateful for that extra effort that my reg went to. However, I have not found that to be an isolated event from one of my registrars. I have found that from numerous staff members from all different ranks within medicine, and of course the nursing staff and allied health staff and everyone else that contributes to this hospital. So the start of my internship, despite being very, what I thought would be overwhelming, was actually exceptionally smooth. So I'm HMO2 now, so my orientation is a little bit further ago from now. But it was extremely helpful. It was a very efficiently run program where everything that you need to know about the hospital is walked through, which was very helpful when I hadn't been here previously. In terms of my shadow shift, I'd say that was probably the most helpful thing that I took out of the program. It was wonderful to get into the team and get a hands-on feel for what was expected of me day to day, and it meant that when I started the following week, I was much more confident. I felt like I could hit the ground running. I felt like I knew who on the ward I could ask questions of if I wasn't sure of what to do. So it really gave me a leg up in terms of starting off the year, which was wonderful.
Similar to everyone else, the 3 days of orientation are incredible, particularly from a practical side, doing your cannulations and ABGs and clinical skills again, and running through deteriorating patient scenarios, which was a good reminder. But same with everyone, the highlight was definitely doing the shadow shift. Same as Ryan, I started on nights, covering all of general surgery and gastroenterology. Seemed daunting going into it, but the shadow shift was perfect. And also had a surge reg on that night who was kind enough to sit me down and go through all the common scenarios. And she probably spent about 3 hours with me that night, running through common pages and things that you probably face on a night shift. And that was a dream, because everything then came into action when I actually started working. So it was a great start.
Thanks, guys. Cardiothoracic sounds lovely, Sophie.
Oh,
I think I want to do it then.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've heard a few of the rotations that are on offer through St. P's. We have a good number of internal rotations in the hospital here. A number of sought-after rotations, cardiothoracics being amongst them for surgery. Plastics, as you've heard, we're a major quaternary referral centre for the state for that. Renal and respiratory, both highly sought-after medical rotations here too. We also rotate to some external hospitals. So the Royal Children's Hospital, we're the only hospital in the state that rotates interns to the Royal Children's. So we have 2 interns rotate per term. Also Werribee and a few of the rural hospitals, Sale, Hamilton and Warrnambool, as you've heard. I was hoping maybe to ask the guys what rotations you're on at the moment, and how you're finding it. What are the challenges and what you're enjoying about it?
For the interns, or?
Maybe for the interns, guys.
So I'm currently in ED, mid-shift at the moment, and it's a great rotation to have at any stage of the year, obviously, Brennan. But it's great to have very early in the piece. So day shifts here, there's always 3 consultants, there's a number of registrars, HMOs and a few other interns in as well. There's any number of people to talk to and ask for help. Every case I do and every case I work up, I discuss with a consultant, and they're more than happy to take the time, very, very approachable, redirect if you're not quite on the right path, or give advice. Happy to do to help you out with organising referrals if you're not quite over everything. It's really, really well supported. So any case you pick up, and half the time I'm going in thinking I don't really know what's going on at all on the basic description. I don't know where this is going to go. But just the level of support and the help, there's no worries when you walk into the scenario where it's a bit of an unknown. You just feel very, very, very well supported, and you know you're not going to get your head bitten off if you go back to the consultant. And I've had a discussion with Brendan as my consultant where I outlined what was going on, and in the end, Brendan goes, "So what do you think's going on?" And I'm like, I've got no idea. I don't know what's happening. So he's like, "Okay, well," and just a walk-through type thing, and that's pretty universal with all the consultants in ED. Very practical, and some really great rotation to get early because you do all your practical skills. You do everything independently, but with very, very close consultation with some very senior doctors. It's really good.
Just from memory, I went and saw the patient and I didn't know what was going on.
So I'm on GEM at the moment, which is geriatric medicine, and I did Gen Med first in Warrnambool, so I think it was kind of a good thing to lead into. And one thing that I really enjoyed about geriatrics is it's a good opportunity to really work in the multidisciplinary team. So it's very involved. We, on a daily basis, are talking to speech pathologists, dietitians, OTs, physios, and you can see every week we meet all together, and you can see that we're all working towards the same goals for patient-centred care, which is really good. I feel like the word well supported keeps being thrown around, but I'm actually quite shocked and feel very supported. I've got a couple of examples, even just today. So we had a bit of a bad day and got some bad news about a patient, and obviously my consultant could just read me well, and I thought I kept a good poker face, but he just called me on my mobile just before to like check in and see that if I wanted to talk about things and run through what happened. And even just like a 3-minute phone call, I just felt really, I was very touched by that. And as a junior doctor, I think it's important to realise that the senior staff actually are looking out for you and thinking about you and your well-being as well. And even in the first couple of weeks at St V's, as I said, I was in Warrnambool and got a call from Rachel, and I was actually on my 5 days off, so I went back to Perth for a holiday. And she was just like, just ringing to check how your first few weeks in Warrnambool are going. And I got off the phone and I was with my other friend from medicine, who was also an intern in Perth, and she was like, I just ring you to see how you're going. I'm like, how nice is that? So yeah, the word keeps being thrown around, but it really is an incredible environment to work in.
So I started my internship, as I mentioned, in cardiothoracics. I'm now in anaesthetics. My next rotation will be emergency, and then I go to Hamilton for a general medical rotation, and then I go to Werribee for an emergency rotation for my 5th one. And exactly what Nicole said in regards to well supported. As all interns, I guess we've all faced certain situations that haven't been favourable. I have had patients pass away, and I too have received phone calls from bosses, or I have been pulled aside by a boss just to make sure things are okay in regards to coping with what occurred. So in anaesthetics at the moment, it's brilliant. It's basically one-on-one teaching with a consultant. It's very hands-on, very procedural. I've been intubating patients with the help of consultants. So yeah, I really recommend it. And that's probably all I have to say so far, apart from reiterating exactly what Ryan and Nicole said about being so well supported.
We might move on to the next topic unless people have burning questions they want to jump in with now. Don't all put your hands up.
Could I just ask where you went to clinical school?
Western.
Are you taking notes? Yes.
When you do your rural rotations, do they set you up with accommodation or?
Yeah.
I did a rotation in Swan Hill last year, and we had accommodation organised for us. So all in advance, we were told where to go. It was really nice accommodation. It was, very comfortable, very new. Yeah, it was great.
Oh yeah, same with Warrnambool, and it's just right next to the hospital. And I think they charge you like $12 a fortnight or something. I don't know why they yeah, like 2 coffees.
So for our rural rotations, Warrnambool, Hamilton and Sale, there's accommodation. Swan Hill.
Not Sale.
Sorry.
We do send other junior medical staff to Sale.
Just had a small stroke there, that's all. We do have accommodation set up, not for our city rotations of Werribee or the children's. I might move on to talk a little bit about the education programme through intern year. And I could, Rachel, perhaps, if you want to talk us through what that looks like.
So, as I mentioned earlier, education is one of I'm the medical education officer, so it's in the title. For interns, we organise weekly protected teaching time, which means you get to get rid of your pager or your phone, and I get to answer them for a whole hour. It's really fun. We organise lots of different topics throughout the year, starting off with some sort of general advice about how to survive your internship or your emergency department rotation, or when you go to your surgical rotation, building up to dealing with challenging patients or having that difficult conversation, what your role is in a Met call, lots of different topics throughout the year, and that's run weekly on a Tuesday lunchtime. We also have skills sessions or workshops throughout the year as well. They range from plastering and suturing to deteriorating patient simulations, workshops on referrals, chest x-ray interpretation, the list goes on really. And then obviously there's other educational opportunities on a daily basis through your ward round, and as the guys have mentioned already, just the opportunistic teaching from your registrars throughout the day.
I might throw this question to the HMOs perhaps, if you guys wouldn't mind. Looking back retrospectively at the year, how did you find the teaching programme? What should you take from it?
So the intern teaching program was fantastic. Every week there was a different topic, something that was designed to be relevant for interns. And as Rachel has said, it's protected teaching time. So if you want to go along for that session, and you're encouraged to at all sessions, your pager is taken for you, and it's very, very well supported in that sense. And the registrars are supportive of you going along to the sessions. So I found it very helpful for the ones that I was along to.
To reiterate, it is properly protected. They do physically take your pages off you, so you're very comfortably sitting there and can take in the whole hour of education, which is great. But certainly on all the other rotations that I had, there was supplementary teaching. So on Gen Med every Monday morning, there was 30 minutes of teaching. On thoracics, there was half an hour every Thursday morning with the consultants. When I was on, I did rehab, and we had formal teaching every fortnight, protected time as well in their unit. When I went to Warrnambool, you also have a guaranteed 1 hour protected teaching time every week, which is great. And on ED as well, I also had teaching. So it's not only the St. B's led weekly Tuesday teaching that you get. In addition to that, you also get formal teaching from the vast majority of units that you work on, which is specific to their unit, and it's great. And in addition to all of that, you get your opportunistic teaching from your regs, which is, on a daily basis, of course.
So, Ryan, anything to throw in there?
Just that we have our new sim man, who's really cool, and so we did a good simulation on the deteriorating patient a few weeks ago, which was, so they've got all the equipment to make the learning even better and more realistic.
We've named our sim man Manny King. I mean, if you don't want to work here now, what's wrong with you? Okay, moving on from there, unless people have questions about the education program. There are also a number of supports obviously offered by the hospital here. I might get Rachel to speak through some of the support specific to our junior medical staff. Thank you.
So obviously, starting your internship is probably pretty daunting, pretty scary for some people coming to Melbourne maybe for the first time, or your first big metropolitan hospital. It might be your first ever full-time job. So we try and put in a lot of supports to begin with to try and make this transition as easy as possible. This starts with the medical education team, which is myself and Brendan, Jenny and Jay, who's hiding up the back. We're here all the time, at the end of an email, end of a phone, to chat to. We have a formal sort of mentoring program that's just specific for interns, and before you start your year, you're paired up with a HMO 3 above or a registrar with common interests. It might be that you both have a similar career aspiration, or you both like surfing or coffee or anything. And that's just another person that you can talk to, maybe ask those hairy questions that you're not quite as comfortable to ask your team about, or just generally have a bit of a chit chat. It's another person that you can turn to for some more support. Within the hospital itself, we've got some more structured programs. One I think is pretty amazing is our STAR program. This is a 24/7 service throughout the hospital, and they respond to sort of critical incidents. They do group debriefing sessions or one-on-one counselling sessions, and they are available 24/7. We also have the St Vincent's Ethos program, and we just so happen to have our ethos manager in the room, so I might get him to explore that a little bit further. Sorry.
Okay, so ethos is, I've got another role. It's a national role with the St Vincent's Health Australia group that Wilma outlined at the start of this session, and I'm the clinical lead for the ethos program. That is, in a nutshell, a feedback system. It originally started in response to concerns about bullying, harassment and discrimination in healthcare, triggered by the College of Surgeons survey that suggested there was enormous amounts of all those things going on in surgical training. And then further discoveries that there was bad behaviour happening across the board in healthcare, not just with surgeons, not just with doctors, but in healthcare in general. So this is our program to try and address as an early intervention model. What actually happens is that if any staff see something they're not happy with, what we'd like them to do first of all is speak up about it. And we'd certainly encourage you, if you see something you're not happy with, to speak up about it there at the time. That's the ideal. Now, if you're not able to do that, what we then want you to do is go and speak to your support person. So that's your manager, which might be your registrar, might be your consultant, and say, I've witnessed this, or this has happened to me, and I need some assistance. If for some reason you feel unable to do that, then we actually provide an anonymous reporting system, which is the ethos tool, and that goes to a triage team who looks at it, and then if they feel it would be useful for the person reported to receive feedback about this, we'll send one of our trained messengers to go and have a chat. So let me give you an example. You're on night shifts, you're tired, you're halfway through your year, it's been tough, and you get your 25th pager for the night, and you are not your best self. Okay? You're grumpy, you're rude, you're obnoxious, and you're not very nice to all the nursing staff. They feel really rattled by it, don't feel they can say anything to you, and they decide to place a report in the system. So what would then happen is that we'd have one of our other junior doctors, who's one of our ethos messengers, come and have a chat with you, make a time to see you. They'd come and they'd say, are you okay? This report came in, it was an anonymous report, but it's concerning. This is what it said, and that person felt really unhappy and really upset by the way you spoke to them, the way they said you spoke to them. Now what's really interesting is the response we've had to this. So the vast majority of cases, we get people who say, I know exactly what this was. I'd had a terrible day, I hadn't slept, I had 100 pages, I had a really sick patient here and a really sick patient there, and I feel terrible. And I'd really like to go and say sorry. And that's really what we're seeing. We've been running for about 2 years now. We've had over 300 of these messages delivered, and the vast majority of cases we're finding that it's just normal people having a bad day. And it's a chance to get some feedback. I don't want to work in a place where there's no checks and balances for me, which means that if I have a bad day and I'm grumpy and I rip someone's head off, I'd love, Brendan tapped me on the shoulder and said, you okay? What's going on? I've heard you've been really grumpy. What's happening? And there will always be a point in your career where you're quite likely to have a bad day and you won't see it. So for me, I've got 3 kids, and after the 3rd child, Ryan slept for a maximum of 20 minutes in a row for 3 months. And that was quite difficult. So I was coming to work and trying to prop things up at home, and it would be the point of my career where I would be at my lowest. So I was chronically sleep deprived, I would have been grumpy, and I would have been short and snappy, and in actual fact, that would have been a time when then my behaviour would have been noticed by the people around me. So the idea that I would have someone like Brendan to have a chat with me and say, you're not okay, is actually really useful, and that's the intent of the program. Now, if there's more serious things happening, like implements being thrown or frank cases of bullying, it actually goes outside the ethos system into our standard HR disciplinary processes. But this is based on a system from overseas that the Vanderbilt group use, and we're finding that it's very useful. to provide feedback to people. That's what it's designed to do. Some people have found the feedback quite challenging, and that doesn't mean it's not useful, but it is something that we're working on. So we'd like to give you the opportunity to receive feedback when you're not at your best. And it's interesting because we've heard lots of things about support and how wonderful everything is, but in actual fact, the career that you're going into is actually tough. It's there's times when it's going to be really hard, and you're going to need a different skill set. If you think about what you need at university, you're actually in a situation where you're working in groups and you're doing nice things, you're looking after patients, but in some ways you're competing with each other. You're trying to get the best marks, you're trying to, look the best in your tutes, you're trying to perform well. That's not what you do in your work life. You actually work in a team. There's a really easy goal that the whole team's working towards, and that's to do the best that you can for your patient. And sometimes, with the best will in the world, if people are tired or exhausted, they might be grumpy, like I was after my third child, and you might find yourself having to negotiate with difficult people. You might have to find yourself dealing with people you don't like, and that's a skill set that you may not have. So we've got people there to help you with those things as well, not just to help you when it's sun is shining, but to help you when it's difficult. Now the good thing is that I was at a course once and I found it very freeing. So it said that 1 out of 3 people you meet won't like you. I thought that was really useful, because if you're someone who really likes people to like you and views that as a measure of success, then it can be hard when you work with people who you find confronting. So a skill set is learning to work with people who you don't necessarily get along with or like, and doing it for a more important reason. That important reason is, how do you get the best outcome for your patients? So 1 in 3 people you meet won't like you. And I've got 3 kids. So I'm still kind of trying to work out which one is it. It's not Sean this week, so Sean's my 10-year-old, and I took him to see the Avengers movie, which those of you who haven't seen it involves an existential threat where Iron Man gets to...
No spoilers! No spoilers!
Am I still on screen? Iron Man gets to bring together a team of crack heroes to deal with this problem, and it's very good. I recommend it. But I was thinking about it before, because that's essentially what we do. So the main psychiatric issue we have at internal level is imposter syndrome, and some of you will struggle with the idea that you're not as good a doctor as you want to be. You're at the bottom of the learning curve, and that's okay. So we will be there to support you, and we do have a crack team ready to support you. So I'm going to introduce you to Jenny Noonan now, who's the Senior Pre-Vocational Training Supervisor, part of our crack team. I guess the point of this analogy is to point out that I'm Iron Man.
Hi, I haven't seen the movie, so I can't even think of who I could say that I am to be relevant. Sorry. And I have to thank everyone else who's done all the hard work for this evening, and while I'm just getting to sit and listen. Yes, I'm one of the pre-vocational supervisors, along with Brendan, and along with Rachel and a couple of others that you haven't seen. Our primary role is to look after our interns and second-year junior medical staff. We take it very seriously. We're very keen for you to meet all of your educational goals, to become excellent doctors and people, and to make sure that you are enjoying it most of the time and that you're okay all the time. So I'll probably let these guys continue on unless there are specific questions for me.
Thank you, Scarlett Johansson. I'm going to hand back over to Brendan at this point and get back on script.
Thank you, Neil. Just springboarding from that, I might ask you guys, kind of reflecting on that, what have you found most challenging about intern year so far, or what did you find most challenging about your intern year?
So, as I said, I started on nights, and on my 5th night, found myself doing CPR in the cardiology ward for a patient that we ended up losing. And that was pretty daunting very early on in the piece.
I had a couple of great registrars who took myself and the other intern aside, had a really good chat with us. We all had a sort of a 7-person team on overnight, and we all just raided the vending machine and sat in an office somewhere and had a big debrief. So that was sort of going into nights. I was worried that was going to be the case, but just to take this opportunity, I know one of the issues you guys will be weighing up will be that St Vincent's offers nights, and there are hospitals that will say that nights are not a thing for you until you're HMO2s. I genuinely say that it's not, for me, I didn't factor it into my selection, and I'm glad I didn't, because having started on them, I don't regret it at all. It was an amazing learning experience, and I would encourage all of you guys to not be afraid of this and not use the nights or no nights as sort of a big selection criteria when you're deciding between a couple of hospitals, because it really is a big positive that I found from the experience here as well.
Well, I'm on nights next, so maybe my biggest challenge will be coming up for me. I think the biggest challenge is, learning to switch off after work. Something that I've really loved about starting work is, compared to 4th year med school, is that you don't actually have to study when you go home. And at the moment, all the registrars are about to do their clinical exams, and they're wanting to talk about pathology and all the tiny details about everything. God, I think I've had enough of that just for at the moment. I don't want to do any study for now. So that's good, but you do realise that you sometimes take things home and you think about your day, and I think learning to switch off is a skill that we'll all need to learn. So that's been challenging at the beginning, but I think I've learned to get better at that.
I think probably one of my biggest challenges is just not being too hard on myself. I suppose in the roles that I've been, my rotation so far, I haven't been working with any other interns. They've all been residents and registrars. And so if I'm not as efficient as them, or I don't have the knowledge like they do, I start to feel like perhaps I'm just not up to the scratch that they're anticipating. And so that's really hard. You've got to, I guess, tell yourself or encourage yourself, or try and just keep persisting. And you'll have bad days where things happen and you realise, or you walk out late or something like that because you weren't as efficient as what you would have liked to be. But that comes, and even just probably with the 18 weeks of experience, that now I feel, I guess, so much more efficient, and I feel that, I guess, no, we don't go home and we study and hit the textbooks, but I certainly do go home and look things up and try and gain an understanding of what might be happening for the patient or something like that. And I guess, just understanding that we're all in the same boat when it comes to internship, and as Neil said earlier, we're at the very beginning of the big learning curve that's ahead of us. So I think also another thing that I've done to try and assist me is also just asking for help and not being afraid to say, I actually need a hand in working this through.
So similar to Ryan, I found that the nights rotations that I did as an intern were very challenging, but also one of the occasions where I felt that actually I learned the most. And similar to that, I did a rotation out at Swan Hill, and I was in the emergency department there. And it's a very different medicine that you find when you're in a smaller centre. And it was interesting to find myself without the same level of registrar and consultant support as you find here at the acute hospital. And the big challenge for me was, I think, having the confidence at times to say, I'm sorry, but I don't know how to, I'm not exactly sure what's going on here, and I don't have the skills to treat this patient, and finding the pathways to reach for help when you do find yourself in a rural centre. So making phone calls to other hospitals, or you've always got people that you can reach out to. But having the comfort within yourself, I think, and the confidence to recognise the limits of your own knowledge, because that's the basis, I think, for safe practice. But it takes a lot when you're used to being somebody who likes to think that they're across most of what you are supposed to be across as a doctor. So I did find that challenging. The good thing about that was that I came away from the country rotation feeling so much more confident about being able to handle situations where previously I would have felt quite daunted. And it's set me up very well for coming into a resident year where you do have a greater level of seniority expected of you. So I really grew from that, and it was a good experience.
For me, it's probably the biggest challenge has been actually dealing with scenarios that are completely out of your control and completely out of your team's control. That can include the unexpected death of a patient, the violent outburst of a patient, the patient who you know that you and your team and the hospital can help but don't want to accept your help. I think those have been the challenging scenarios. And like what was mentioned before, there are such incredible supports available, and just as Sophie and the others mentioned, can't tell you how many times I got calls or texts or emails from bosses, from consultants and professors and registrars checking in on you on those situations. I think going into internship, I thought that my biggest challenge would be clinical aptitude or knowledge on the wards, but I think that you're surrounded by such an incredible team, 24 hours a day, day shift, night shift, whatever, that you always have a second pair of eyes or ears to help you through those scenarios. So I think my expected challenges definitely changed throughout the past sort of year and a bit.
Thanks, guys. Moving on from kind of reflecting on the challenges of the intern year, might look forward to the opportunities for career progression and training programs. Here at St. Bede's we have an amazing physician training program, a gold standard for the state. I'm going to say we have an excellent critical care training program through for emergency anaesthetics and ICU, and a budding surgical training program as well, with a huge number of opportunities both for formalised regular surgical training and a mentorship program for budding surgeons as well. I don't know, Rachel, if you want to speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so with the Preset Surgical Society here at St. Vincent's, they run weekly tutorials, and then I'm involved in running a monthly workshop which includes more hands-on practical skills. We had one last night on ICU management of surgical patients. We also have developed a more educational program for the HMO group, which now runs fortnightly on a Wednesday lunchtime. And these sessions are run by registrars and supported by the consultant in that team. Last week's session was on toxicology from one of the ED registrars, which was pretty entertaining. So there's lots of opportunities for education even at the levels after intern program.
Maybe to Dom and Jackie, I'm just wondering how you decided to choose your chosen fields at the moment and how you're finding them.
So, as I said earlier, I'm a surgical resident this year, HMO2, and for me it's largely based on clinical interest, leading into internship and having the fortunate experience to have 2 phenomenal surgical terms in internship, and also knowing the mentorship program and the education program that existed at St. Bede's for surgery, and on top of that research as well, which is such a huge part of surgical training these days. I was here today just on a research day working on that. So from the surgical aspect, as Rachel was mentioning, we have the Preset Surgical Society, which does weekly teaching, often presented by a registrar and supported by a consultant as well who's there. And there's also a surgical forum which runs for 3 days every year, typically in July, which gives you the opportunity to present research and also listen to some of the leaders in the field, not only from St. Bede's but from all over Australia. I think the opportunities within surgery at St. Bede's are truly endless in terms of education and mentorship, because you get set up with a mentor, either a registrar or a consultant of your specialty of choice, and you can meet up with them as frequently as you want. I certainly do with mine quite regularly for coffee and for meetings, and sometimes it'll just be joining them in theatre, or sometimes it'll be somewhere in Fitzroy and Gertrude Street, just grabbing a coffee and a bite to eat. So, and that's well and truly for every specialty you can think of. So, when you do surgery, come to St. Bede's.
For me, I think that choosing to do a medical year this year as a BPT1 was both about deciding that I really love internal medicine, and also the fact that St Vincent's offers a phenomenal training program for basic physicians training. So essentially last year when I did my rotations, I started off on vascular surgery, and a lot of people when they do surgery are very enthusiastic about rushing down to theatre. I was very enthusiastic about staying on the ward and taking care of the medical needs of those vascular patients, so that was quite telling. And then later in the year I had a wonderful renal rotation at the end of the year, and I think it was at every level the people that I worked with inspired me. It was the dialysis nurses that were on the ward who were always friendly and always willing to help. It was the registrars that I worked with who always made time for me, always actively taught on the ward. The residents also actively taught on the ward whenever they had the opportunity. And the consultants who were great role models in terms of the care that they provided, not only the phenomenal amount of knowledge that they have, but they actually seem to genuinely care about the people that they're treating, which means a lot. So it was an easy decision for me to want to do medicine. And then I've seen how dedicated all of the staff here are to teaching the BPTs. So I was very enthusiastic to stay here and do my training year this year as a BPT1. I've done a rotation in geriatrics so far, and I'm now at Werribee in general medicine, which is a good introduction to general medicine and physicians training.
Thanks, guys. I realise we haven't taken too much of a break yet for questions, so I might offer the opportunity now. Yeah.
First of all, thank you to all the panelists who came by. It's good to see Ryan and hope the baby's doing well. I am a medical student from the University of Melbourne, and obviously, like many of us, I think go into lots of different sessions, and I think welfare has obviously become a huge part of the delivery of the intern program, which is fantastic, and I think a real generational change in how medicine is done. I think one of the dimensions is around overtime. And I guess in the post-revision of the executive bargaining agreement, I'd be really interested in the perspective of both the current and former interns as well as the staff around what are the policies and philosophies and changes to do, particularly with rostered versus unrostered overtime.
Absolutely. I might get the perspective of yourselves first.
Yeah.
I was paid all of my overtime that I did last year.
Drop the mic.
Yeah, so was I. But I think the biggest thing is that it just doesn't happen very often. Certainly in the rotations that I did last year, there just wasn't unrostered overtime. The rosters were so effective that you had a cover. You finished your shift, there was always a cover there. So, I mean, you'd finish your work. If there was anything extremely pressing or an extremely unwell patient, you would hand that over to the cover because of the way it was structured. And I just wasn't really doing the unrostered overtime. But in the odd occasion that I really had to, for example, if a registrar was away and unwell, and you were just sort of forced into taking on a bit more of a load. At least in my scenarios, the consultant would simply come up to you and say, "Can you just send me an email with the extra time that you've been doing, and we'll make sure that you get remunerated for that." And that was them approaching me, so that was very generous of them. But yeah, the rosters are phenomenal. That you don't actually end up doing too much, which is phenomenal.
I've been encouraged to apply for overtime, but I haven't worked any overtime. In Warrnambool on my first rotation, I did a fair bit of overtime at the start, and I didn't apply for it because it would take me like 1 hour to order a chest x-ray. So it just felt like it was my own fault. But as you go on, you get more efficient. But also I think, as it was said before, there's always cover there, and I think it's quite a skill to learn that you just need to hand over. Obviously there are days where you have to stay back because you're the ones that know the patient best, and if there are pressing things that need to be done, you stay back. But again, it was stressed to me by my consultant in Warrnambool. He was like, you just need to hand over things. That's what the cover's there for. You give them a good handover, they'll do the jobs for you for that night. But other than that, on geriatrics at the moment, I have a bit of rostered overtime, so I'm working more hours than the basic 38 because I do cover shifts every week as well. So tonight till 10 p.m. working, getting paid. But yeah, it's been pretty good.
Nights is easy because you just come and go on the dot because there's always a handover on time and away you go. And ED is very, very similar, but at the same time, I think we've got a good panel, maybe specifically hand chosen because none of us have done it. But realistically, there has been some overtime work by people that I know of that hasn't been paid. But the other side of the coin is for the jobs that are heavy workloads, that they are either spread between a couple of interns where you do 4 long days a week instead of 5, or they are specifically rostered for 54 hours, I think is one type thing. So realistically, and that's not every week type thing, but realistically for those jobs that come with a heavy workload and for the vast majority of rotations, they're not just 38 hours capped and then that's it. And if you happen to have to do more work, then that's bad luck. There are some jobs that come with a higher workload, but that's counted into and formulated into the rostering system as well. And I think as a general rule across the board, I'm not setting out of line, but I think in any job with a wage, like it is unreasonable to expect that as soon as the clock ticks 5, you just drop your pen, pencil, and turn your computer off and walk out the door. There's always going to be a little bit of wiggle room in terms of the finishing times, and it goes both ways in terms of finishing early sometimes as well. So, but I don't think it's been a major hurdle. I don't know of anybody in our cohort who has had major issues in terms of their working over and above what they've been rostered and have been denied. I think when it's been there, it's been well looked after.
Thanks, guys. Neil, I'm not sure if you want to add anything to that as Director of Medical Workforce.
So overtime, I think, is very, very important to be aware of. It's been something that the EBA was very, very rigid about, and I think from a hospital point of view, we think you should be paid for all the hours that you work. We're also very aware of fatigue management. I've spent 10 years teaching consultants how to manage crises and human factors, and the evidence from neuroscience is that your performance under fatigue deteriorates very, very rapidly. And that includes your performance on a day after a long day. So if you've worked a 16 to 20 hour day the day before, and you turn up to work the following day, there's an expectation that we'd get about 4 hours of performance out of you before it would rapidly drop. The old style medical rosters where you might be on call for a whole week or in the hospital, genuinely being a resident in the hospital, the intensity of work now does not allow that to be functional. You need to go home, you need to get some sleep, and the gaps in the EBA, so the gaps between shifts, are designed to allow you to do that. What we've tried to do in this hospital over the past couple of years is, rather than impose a 38-hour-a-week roster on a particular unit, for that not to be functional, for that to be ignored and people just to work more, we've worked with the units to develop bespoke rosters in every unit. So you'll find that in the unit you work, it's not just a standard 38-hour shift. It'll start when the ward round starts, and it will finish when it finishes. So you might find yourself working 4 days a week with multiple interns and residents, or you might find yourself on a rostered 48-hour week rather than that. And then on top of that, if you have unrostered overtime, which happens, then we would expect that you be paid for that. We want you to be able to work at your highest performance. We want you to be able to learn. We want you to be able to sleep. We want you to be able to come back the next day and look after our patients. That's what we're here for, and that's the best way to do it. So you'll find the rosters are not standard. They'll be standard for a unit. They'll be bespoke for a unit. We will then be looking at using spikes of unrostered overtime to say what's going on in that unit. Is it because there's a few people off sick and there's lots of overtime, or is it because the activity in that unit has increased significantly and we need to add another person in there? So very much the forefront of our minds at the moment. We'll use overtime and pay overtime when it's required, but we do not want you working enormous amounts of overtime purely because we want you to look after our patients and also because we want you to look after yourselves as well. Hopefully that answers the question in a very long way.
Thank you. Any other burning questions for us?
Hi. My question was to you, that's all right. It was a question. I'm also a parent, and I'm aware that there's a lot of rural rotations within the internship.
No, I'm still
year.
with Brendan and you're coming hand in the meeting.
How much flexibility there is for people without family commitments in Melbourne around the street, I suppose, and around the street.
Completely understand that. I'll get back ASAP.
Sure, do you want to perhaps film?
Almost fell over. So with the external rotations, the Werribee and the Royal Children's we would consider non-rural. When you have to put in your roster preferences or your rotation preferences, we have tried, we've had multiple people looking at this from multiple different aspects to make the share of rural rotations as even as possible. You'd never be asked to do more than one rural rotation in your year. And then after that comes out and you've got your preferences, if there's any issues with that, there's then an opportunity to go and swap between the cohort if that's, an ability, if anyone wants that sort of rotation. So there is flexibility in that to go from there.